there's a statistician in Chicago at Rush University that has reached out to me a few times. They have REDCap. They've seen our CB2 website. They've watched some of the videos and things like that. And so they reached out to me to, ask me some questions. And so I help them from time to time when I have a chance, because I like, I like helping people with REDCap, and it kind of gets the word out, and everybody, we've gotten people from all over the world kind of ask us about stuff. And, different institutions have different levels of REDCap. Some don't, a lot of places don't keep their REDCap instances up to date as we do. And so we have a lot of features that they don't have. And there's another guy that I've given access to our REDCap just so he can tinker with the new features, and then can go back to his institution and say, hey, look, if you guys update to this, then we can do all these things. But anyway, this statistician from Rush asked me if there was a way to keep track of time zones values in REDCap. So if they were, they're in Chicago, but if they're part of a national project and they're registering people for appointments in different cities all over the country, how do you track their appointment dates and times in the local time zone when you're in Chicago? And so she asked if there was an external module that tracked, time zone, or if there was any value, any way to set up a time zone in REDCap. And unfortunately, there isn't. It seems like there should be. It seems like that should be an easy thing for them to implement, but it's not in REDCap. So I thought it was kind of an interesting concept, an interesting idea, and I thought maybe I could try it. And little did I know that our time zones are a bit crazy. I figured our time zones were relatively simple, but they're not. For the most part, most states only have one time zone, which is nice. But there are some states that have multiple time zones, depending on which county you're in. And then there are some places where the county is actually split up between time zones. So if you're like, I think there's some place in Idaho where if you're north of this river, you're in a different time zone than if you're south of this river. And so then you have to take into account certain counties. And then in Nevada, there are 2 towns in Nevada that have a different time zone from every other town in that county. And so, I mean, there's a lot of weird little corner cases for time zones and things. So I took it upon myself to try to build this project. Oh, and then on top of that, you also have to take into account daylight saving time, because Arizona doesn't observe daylight saving time. Hawaii doesn't observe daylight saving time, but Navajo Nation does observe daylight saving time. And then Navajo Nation is spread across 3 counties in Arizona. So depending on what county they're in, they could be part of the Navajo Nation or not. So you kind of have to ask them if they're a part of the reservation or not. So that was another big thing. So anyway, I have all of these little things that set these values. So let me just show you what I built. So I have it based, so not all of the time zones require a county or a city, but I have it default to where it's requiring all that. And you can see here that as we're entering, my time zone hasn't been set. And then if I select Arizona, and then we're going to say Pima County. Once I set that, this table pops up and it shows you. So this project was in Chicago, so I just have this hard-coded for Central. I'm in Mountain Time. We don't observe daylight savings time, and daylight saving time isn't in effect right now. So I have it set to where I can test this to turn it on, and you can see here that this will, this would change based on whether it was in effect or not. Because the nice thing about them being in Chicago is they observe daylight saving time, so a majority of the other states do. So the time differences won't matter. It's really only when you're in Arizona or Hawaii that it would. So for example, if I was in Dilcon on the Navajo reservation, so this is going to ask me now if, because there's 3 counties, I believe it's Apache, Coconino, and Navajo County. Now it's going to ask me if I live on the Navajo reservation. So Dilcon is on the Navajo reservation. And so it's going to ask me that. And now it's saying that daylight savings time is observed. And if it's in effect, this will be an hour difference. But if not, so you can see here that now daylight saving time doesn't have any effect because Chicago and the Navajo Nation are shifting at the same time. But if I was in Winslow, which is in Navajo County as well, but is not part of the reservation, now you can see that it's not observed, and now it'll change for that. The other thing too, I'm trying to remember the name of I think it's Jackson, Las Vegas. Oh, sorry, Nevada. And this is the other thing. This county, there's like 50 county fields, because I have a field that pops up for every state. So it's just going to erase the one for Arizona and the Navajo reservation. And then I'm going to say this is an Elko. And they're in Mountain. But I think it was like, let me see, just change this. So you can see here that if it's not Jackson or Wendover, it'll be Mountain. But if it's anything else, it's Pacific time. So this would set so this is the first part of this thing. So this sets your time zone for your participant. And then if I save this and go to the next form, this is the appointment for this person. And this just brings in the information from the previous one so they can immediately see that those times are set. And if I had an appointment today at now, they also wanted to know if there was a way to give them the time depending on whether the appointment time was set for the participant's local time or if it was set by the project time. So if the person was in Chicago and they were like, you have an appointment at 2 o'clock Chicago time, then they would want to know what that time was in the participant's location. Or if the person said, hey, you're in Arizona and your appointment is 10 o'clock in Phoenix, Arizona time, what time would that be in Chicago? And so they want to be able to know both of those. So if this was local time or participant time, really, local is Chicago. If I say this is as a participant and it's 1:30 now, it's 1:30 here Pacific, but then it'll be 15:30 Central. So that way, if you send out a notification, you have both times on it. Now, if I set this as 1:30 Chicago time, it's going to be 11:30 my time. So you can see here that this value changes. So let me show you how I built this. So in the demographics table, I have a field that's hidden, and this is where I set the central time zone. So I'll make a template of this project, or I'll put the XML up when I put this on the red zone. So that way, if you guys want to download it, what you would do is you would just come in here and you would just change this value to your local time zone. So for Arizona projects, you would set this as Mountain, and then that would be Mountain time for this entire project. And I have instructions here, just, what time to put, and these values have to be this way and they have to be in all caps because that's how REDCap is case sensitive. So if you put Mountain in like lowercase or, capital M, it's not going to pick it up. And then the branching logic and all that stuff won't work. And then I have this field for daylight saving time, which you would just hide with the action tag whenever you had your project set up. These are the banners that I have. And now this is the little demographic group. And one thing I learned that I thought was really cool, I've never tried this, but you can actually embed multiple fields in one little table data cell. And then I have the branching logic for each one of these counties set to show or hide based on which state I select. And so from the data entry point of view, the person only sees one county field, but there's really 50 of them, and it's only displaying the one that you're selecting. So that's really how all this works. There's a lot of them. Because you have to do Washington, D.C. as well. And then I have this where they're in the Navajo reservation. And then when I build projects, I like to color code things so that way at a glance I can visually see immediately what kind of field it is. So any of these pink fields are calculated fields that I built. And so this county calc text here, this is what's showing. I'm taking that value, I'm grabbing the value from the state, and then I'm getting the value from the county, because the problem with having the counties in each county is broken up by state is I have 51 fields that could potentially have a value. And so I don't want to have to search through all of those to figure out which one has the county value. So that's what I'm doing here is I'm just saying, if you select Rhode Island, the person filled out a county in Rhode Island, I want you to grab that value and put it in this field for me. So whatever value they fill out for whatever county, it's going to get put here so I can use it for my calculations. And then whether or not they observe daylight saving time, I have all of this. And so most of them are no, but as you can see here, most of them are yes, except for Hawaii. And then with Arizona, I had to break it out by county because the branching logic in REDCap, if you have something that's more specific, for example, if I have the state and the county and whether they're on the reservation or not, I couldn't just leave these and then set the rest of Arizona, if it's Arizona and not equal to these, say yes, because for some reason with the branching logic in REDCap, the way they're ordered and the specificity of each one can kind of override other things that logically make sense. And so you kind of have to specify really, you have to be very clear on everything. So I had to break everything out by county for Arizona. And then for the counties that are on the Navajo reservation, I had to break them out even further and say yes or no. So this sets the yes or no value for whether they observe daylight saving time. This one actually sets whether or not it's daylight saving time. And I went through an almanac online that has all of the days that, because their project is going to run for like 5 or 7 years. So this has the next 10 years or next 9 years of when daylight saving time is going to start and end for each of those years. And so I just have this calculation that just checks each one of these. So that way they don't have to worry about it. It'll automatically turn on or off based on the date. The other thing too is this is the date that you're filling this out, but I also have another field in the other appointment form that checks whether or not the appointment date is in daylight saving time, because I could be filling it out now for March and March 11th or March 12th, and it'll pick up whether that appointment daylight saving time is in effect for that appointment. And then finally, the big one is the time zone, and it's a lot, but there's really only 6. I think there's 6 time zones, so it's a lot of everything is by state and by county. So you can see this huge group, all of these, and we get down to all of those are for central, and then we have, I think central and eastern are like the biggest ones. Yeah, and then we have eastern, and then we start getting into, and these are the ones I had to do for Nevada, and I hard coded these in because if they ever get somebody from Jackson or Wendover, it's going to be different. But also, depending on how people enter data, if they enter it with the capital J or if they all lowercase or all uppercase, you have to account for all of those, because REDCap isn't case sensitive, and the branching logic's not going to work if somebody types something in differently. And it was arduous to go. I had to go online and find a database and where I could get all these counties and everything with the time zones. And then so here's mountain, and then we have Pacific, and then Alaska and Hawaii are easy because it's just those two. So these are all of the counties. These are all the permutations of county and state and city. Because like you can see here, California, all one time zone makes it super easy. Same thing with Nevada, except for the other ones. Those two towns in one county that make it different. So getting all this together and getting it working was the arduous task. That's what sets the time zone. And then I want to know the time difference between each one of these. And this, let me show you a table that I created that explains this a little better. So these are set for Central Time, and so you, depending on where you are, if everything is in relation to Central Time, these would be the hours difference for all of the 6 time zones. You know, obviously Central, there's no difference, but then, you know, Eastern is 1 hour ahead, Mountain is 1 hour behind, but then you also have to take into account for daylight saving time. So Hawaii would actually shift an hour further. Arizona and California basically are on the same time, so then theirs changes as well. Since Alaska observes daylight saving time, theirs would stay the same. Mountain would stay the same. You know, Central and Eastern would stay the same. So these are all hard coded in here for Central. So and I'll put these in because I built. I have a spreadsheet. I have this spreadsheet, but I also have, these are all the values for depending on where your project is. So if you were in Arizona, these would be the values that you would put into this column or in this window here. So I'll put these up in I have a note file that has all these in here for this. So that's everything just to set the participant's time zone. Now when we get to the actual appointment, the meat of it, this has its own issues as well. So it's pretty simple. You have the banners, you know, once again, whether their time zone and time difference isn't set, and if it is, what is it, and then their values for the time zone and daylight saving time. And then I have this embedded for the appointment date and appointment time and the time zone. And then this banner that pops up that fills in the information. So these are the embedded fields. And then what I have to do is I have to grab the appointment time and I have to take just the hour because the minutes don't change obviously for daylight saving time, but I'm grabbing just the hour. So I'm saying, and I always use this kind of if this appointment time isn't blank, give me the left 2 digits of the appointment time. So I'm taking the hour and I'm grabbing the minutes just so I have that value separately because I do have to use that in a calculation just to put it all back together. And then I'm adjusting that value. So I'm saying if the person checks the appointment time is local, which would be Chicago, then it's just the appointment time hour, nothing changes. But if it's the participant, if their appointment time zone is set to participant, then I need to subtract the time difference from that. Because if they're in Chicago and it's in Arizona, well, now it's 2 hours, you know, it's 11 there, it's 9 o'clock here. So I have to subtract that time difference. And then the opposite to that, if it's participant, it's the appointment time, you know, because I'm not changing the appointment time. But then if it's local Chicago time, then I'm adding the time difference. Because if it's 9 o'clock Arizona time, I have to add the time difference because it's 11 o'clock there. So I'm doing that. And then I'm rebuilding the appointment time. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the, this is the adjusted, those are the fields I just showed you, the adjusted local time. If it's not blank, I want to concatenate the local time, just the hour, and I want to put a colon in there, and then I want to add the minutes. So I'm basically rebuilding the time value with the new adjusted value. And then it's the same. So that's for local, and then this is for participant. It's doing the same thing. If the participant value is not blank, give me the hour of the adjusted participant time, and then give me put a colon and then the minutes together. And then finally, this is just giving me the value of whether or not that appointment date is within the range of daylight saving time. So all of that together allows me to, set these values for an appointment. And then these values, this information could be something that's thrown into a notification or an alert for people to have like appointment reminders, that kind of thing. But basically all of that work is just so you get this nice, these values of, whether when it's, 1:43 our time, it's going to be 2:43 Central Time, and if it's 1:43 their time, it's going to be 12:43 our time. So that's the time zone demo. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, Michael put something in the chat for time and date services. Yeah, I mean, I looked at these. I thought about trying to figure out a way to use an API to grab a value to pull into REDCap, but I'm not really well versed in the API. This might be something that would be really cool to look into, using API values. It might save a lot of like hard coding of this kind of stuff. So, I mean, it was complex and it was interesting, and it wasn't difficult. It was just, there was a lot of moving parts and a lot of little variables to keep track of. And you really have to kind of break everything into small pieces and figure out what exactly you need and then slowly build everything up. So it was a nice little experiment. And one of the reasons I did it on my own time over an evening or the weekend when I was off. But I thought it would be helpful because we have a lot of groups that, set up appointments for people, and we're in Arizona. So we have, if people are being enrolled in different states, we always have the issue of daylight saving time because we don't observe it. And so I thought this was a good thing that potentially could be used in projects that we have here. And so I've also found that it's really nice because if you use the data dictionary to upload or download your projects, sometimes it complains. Like with this one, there's so many values in the each one of those calculated fields that whenever I would try to import it with the data dictionary, it would wreck it because somehow there's a comma or something that shifts everything and throws off the CSV. But I found for complex projects, it's actually really nice to use the XML function. So downloading it as an XML and then uploading the project as an XML is super easy. So this was actually really nice. And what I'm going to do is for some of these projects, I'm going to download this XML and I'll put it on the video website as a downloadable link. That way, if you guys watch the video and it's something you want to mess with, you guys can always just download the XML and upload it as your own project. And then you guys can mess with all the, branching logic and formulas and all that stuff to your heart's content. And it's a good way for you guys to learn instead of just watching me run through it. I know some people, and I'm the same way, like I'm very hands-on, and I also like to see how things work by tinkering with them. So I'm going to start trying to put these XML files up for projects so people have them. We tried to do it with templates before in the like in the projects down. Let me see where we have templates. Like when you go to a new project, like these here, we have we have this HTML examples, and we started trying to put them in here, but the problem is that this would get too muddied, and then they're really, these demos are very like specialized and they're not very general. These are more general for like people who are building, longitudinal projects, or I want to know how surveys work, that kind of stuff. So I think the XML file on our website would probably be the best way to do it. That way people can download it and use it if they want. And then that way we don't have to share, because I've also done projects where I've shared, like I built demos for people and then I share the project with them so they can go in and tinker with it. But the problem with that is you've got somebody tinkering with it, and it's not a problem that they're messing with it. It's just that if they're messing with it, then things can change based on what they've done, and it'll be different than what you see in the demo. So it's nice to have, if it's the XML file, then it's a clean copy. You would just create your own project, and then you could be able to do whatever you wanted with it. And then if you mess something up, you could always just, delete the project and then re-upload the XML and start from scratch. And so I think that's just the most versatile and robust way to give you guys access to all these things that we demo.